require states do E-Verify before they grant a CDL, we might save some more lives. Let's start with ICE immigration detainers. From October 2022 through February 2025, state and local jails declined more than 25,000 ICE detainers. In more than 1,400 additional cases, they failed to provide proper notice before releasing an alien from custody. That's not symbolic resistance. That's operational non-cooperation. It undermines federal law. It increases the risk to law enforcement. It increases the risk to the person arrested even. And it results in the release of removable criminal aliens back into American communities. This administration, the Trump administration, the Noem administration, is enforcing the tools Congress provided. We expect cooperation, not obstruction. The consequences are not hypothetical. ICE data from FY 2025 shows that sanctuary jurisdictions released offenders with homicide charges or convictions, and I'm going to highlight just several examples. Rami Jalal Nisan, an Iraqi national with 28 arrests. Chicago ignored 3 ICE detainers. 15 of his arrests occurred after the first detainer was issued. Waldemar Zibik, a Polish national convicted of attempted murder after stabbing his wife and daughter, was released despite an ICE detainer. Alexander Pascual Pedro, arrested for aggravated criminal sexual abuse of a child, released despite a detainer, later convicted of solicitation to meet a child, and then arrested again for domestic violence. Ismael Gomez Urzua, deported 4 times, 3 detainers ignored despite arrest for narcotics, fleeing police, and weapons violations. Dennis Humberto Navarrete Romero, an illegal immigrant, was arrested for many crimes but released into the community repeatedly. He went on to allegedly rape a woman on a trail in Fairfax County. Abraham Gonzalez, Venezuelan gang member, arrested in Denver for aggravated assault, motor vehicle theft, and felony menacing. Denver gave ICE only 1 hour's notice before forcing officers to arrest him in a public parking lot where an officer was assaulted. Those aren't policy disagreements. Those are public safety failures, a willful desire to hold the community or put the community in danger. Beyond those individual cases, we've seen tragic losses around this country, not just of the Angel families here today, but Laken Riley, killed by a Venezuelan national unlawfully present in the U.S. Rachel Morin, a 37-year-old mother in Maryland, raped and killed by an illegal alien from El Salvador, later convicted of first-degree murder. Jocelyn Nungary, 12-year-old girl in Houston, sexually assaulted and murdered by 2 Venezuelan nationals unlawfully present in the U.S. They have been charged with capital murder. And we could go on and on. So, Madam Secretary, what is the value of an ICE detainer, and why is it such an important public safety tool?
Well, a detainer that we would lodge with the local law enforcement jurisdiction lets them know that when they are going to release that individual out to the public, that we would like to take custody of that. When we have detainers that are honored, we can go into a courthouse, we can go into a jail or a prison, and in a safe environment, take custody of that individual, take them to a detention center, and remove them to their home country. When they don't honor our detainers, that individual is released out into the streets. And what we know for a fact is hundreds and hundreds of times, thousands of times across the country, those individuals reoffend. And what they're doing by not honoring detainers is creating more victims.
When ICE issues a detainer, you're not asking local officers to conduct immigration sweeps in neighborhoods. You're requesting simply notice before release or a brief lawful hold so you can assume custody, right?
That is correct.
If ICE is requesting a short hold, that means that the individual's already in state or local custody.
Correct.
And individuals in jail are there because there was probable cause for arrest, and in many cases because they've been convicted of crimes, right?
Correct.
And so when these sanctuaries policies are enacted, they put the community at harm, they put your agents at risk, and even the perpetrator at risk. And Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back, but I have some UC requests.
Gentleman's recognized for UC.
Thank you. Radical rhetoric by sanctuary politicians leads to an unprecedented 1,300% increase in assaults against ICE officers and a 3,200% increase in vehicular attacks. Which sanctuary jurisdictions have released the most criminals?
Objection.
Virginia Governor Spanberger faces blowback after releasing illegal immigrant who stabbed a woman to death.
Objection.
Spanberger urged to cooperate with ICE after alleged killing by illegal immigrant.
Objection.
Sanctuary cities pose an unacceptable risk to public safety.
Objection.
When did safety become a license to defy the law? the dangers of sanctuary cities.
Without objection.
The DHS shutdown, a reckless gamble verging on madness.
Without objection.
Can we finally agree that sanctuary cities are a failed experiment?
Without objection.
The not-so-fine line between sanctuary and threat.
Without objection.
DHS funding remains in limbo as GOP lawmakers warn of retaliatory terror attacks.
Without objection.
Democrat rep whines about DHS harassing illegal alien he brought to State of the Union.
Without objection.
New Maryland bill means more victims of migrant criminals, DHS warns.
Without objection.
If you're an illegal, stabbing someone isn't enough for this country to lock you up.
Without objection.
Coast Guard addresses recent media reporting.
Without objection.
Current shutdowns impact on immigration agencies from DHS.
Without objection.
U.S. ICE examples of egregious criminal aliens released into Illinois.
Without objection.
The Independent. Police arrest and charge Rafael Govea Romero.
Without objection, I think the gentleman may set a record here.
Yeah.
He has set a record.
February 18th, 2026, response to Representative Gosar's letter from Secretary Noem.
Without objection.
Another response from Secretary Noem dated February 4th, 2026 to Gosar.
Without objection.
And also, finally, DHS OIG highlights covert testing of TSA's checkpoint security screening effectiveness.
Without objection.
Thank you. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
Gives me an opportunity to show you the 8 letters that I have sent to you over the last year, only one of which have been replied to. So it gives me an opportunity to ask you the questions and try to get an answer. One of the things you're most famous for, probably your quote of quotes, is we're going to go after the worst of the worst. The murderers, the pedophiles, the rapists, etc. In my letters, I said I agree with you on those things. People who are in this country illegally or not citizens who commit those crimes should be deported. But the facts show that most of the people that you have stopped and tried to deport have not committed any of those crimes. In fact, they've committed no crimes at all. I've got a study here from the Justice Department that shows that less than half as undocumented immigrants are less than half as likely as U.S.-born Americans to be arrested for homicide. And the pattern holds for assault, sexual assault, robbery, burglary, theft, and arson. And they're half as likely to be arrested for drug offenses. That's an NIJ study. In Tennessee, there was a study that was just in the Commercial Appeal, our local newspaper in Memphis, that shows the same, that they are very unlikely to commit offenses. For the folks that are here and your families, I'm sorry. It's terrible what happened to your children or your family members. But they are more likely, and citizens are more likely to be attacked by United States citizens who are not undocumented, who came here and are born here. They are more likely to commit these crimes. So why do you continue to talk about the worst and the worst when all the statistics show we're not stopping the worst and the worst? We're doing what Stephen Miller wants to do and set a record of deportations.
Can I respond to you now, sir?
I hope you will now.
Okay,
It's been
good.
a year.
Well, thank you for your letters, and we have responded to those. When I came into office, there was years of letters that Mayorkas did not respond to, that we had to backlog and respond to all the letters that he received as secretary. And in fact, one of those letters was
I just want to hear about the letters I wrote you.
567 days old.
Just tell me about the letters I wrote you.
I have responded to over 1,490 letters that I've gotten from members of Congress.
You could have done
in the last 12
1,498
months.
and done mine
That's
as well.
just individual letters. Sometimes they had 60 to 70 signatures on them, and we responded to every one of them.
Tell me about the worst
we
of the worst.
The worst of the worst, sir. I think you've offended the families behind me today with that.
Did not intend to, and I think it's wrong for you to suggest it.
You're commenting on the fact that the individuals aren't violent reoffenders, and you keep talking about the fact that these individuals that are in this country illegally don't harm families.
No, I didn't say that. I said they're less likely than people born here. I didn't say that they don't do it.
The vast majority of these people behind me lost their children due to drugs, overdoses from drugs that came over the southern border. They died from their kids being hit on accidents on the roads that illegal drivers were driving. Truck drivers, Marcus Coleman and Delilah's father has told the story over and over again.
All that's true and a given. That's true and a given, Ms. Noem, but you say you're only going after the worst of the worst, and you're not. Go after the worst of the worst. And if you did, people wouldn't find your department to be the worst department in the United States of America.
We do targeted enforcement based on intelligence and go after those. When we are on those enforcement actions, if there are people with those individuals, we confirm their identities as well to make sure that they have legal status in our country. We need to make sure that people understand country illegally, overstay a student visa, if you don't go in for your
I'm going to
court
reclaim my time
appearances,
because
if you're out of legal
I'm
status,
reclaiming my
then you need
time,
to
Madam
go home.
Secretary, please. That's one issue. Another issue is the fact of training. And an ICE Academy has Ryan Schwank, a former instructor and immigration and customs enforcement attorney, joined ICE in 2021 and resigned February 13 because he wanted people to know that he received secretive orders to teach new cadets to violate the Constitution by entering homes without a judicial warrant. He says the time, the studies, the constitutional law and deadly force have all been cut down. Instead of doing 8 hours a day, they do 12 hours a day. You've increased.
Sir, the gentleman you're referencing was detailed to Secy for training for a couple of months. He's a trial attorney. He was never there before we changed the curriculum. He was only there for a couple of months after we had changed it and made sure that it was 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. All of the individuals received all the training they did before.
I've got 27 seconds left.
They also
Let me-
received
27
training.
seconds left. I'll reclaim my time. I taught police law. You get more learning in the less time you give them. If you more time, they learn less because their brains start to go other places. Do you have any people that you've hired who were January 6 offenders?
Not that I know of.
Can you go in your records and tell me if anybody who you hired was a January 6 offender?
I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Gentleman's
Yield back
time
the
has
balance.
expired. Mr. Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Noem, I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to thank you for your service as governor during the COVID epidemic, when so many governors and mayors used their power to limit freedoms. I think you, along with Ron DeSantis, exercised great discretion by trusting the people that you worked for, basically your citizens, to make their own decisions about vaccines and mandates and lockdowns. So my hat's off to you for your service there. And I know the job you have now is extremely difficult. Today here on the dais, it's going to be partisan, I know that. But keep in mind that the majority of Americans support the work that you all are doing. And we want to make it easier, and we want to make it safer for the citizens and for your officers who are carrying out this difficult work. So one of my questions is deals with body cameras. I've talked to my local law enforcement, sheriffs and police departments in my district, Republicans and Democrats who hold those offices, and almost unanimously they support body cameras, and so do the officers and deputies who work for them, because they believe it protects the officers as much as it protects the citizens who may be offending the law in some way and need to be arrested. So I want to ask you for an update on body cameras and your opinion on that. That's something that the Democrats have demanded, but it's something that I think might just be common sense. So what's your thought on body cameras?
Yes, we certainly are working to get body cameras on all of our officers. CBP has had them on many of their agents that interact with people for the last several years, but they haven't been many times supported financially for running the systems that run the body cameras. Also, ICE has body cameras deployed, but we're not funded for body cameras right now. So that's one thing I'd like to ask you all to do. And we are doing that. I think we now today maybe have 14,000 body cameras on agents that are out doing enforcement, but clearly we need tens of thousands more. And we need to be able to maintain them, have the analyzers that can go through the video to make sure that it is a situation that it's analyzed for these investigations. And I agree with you. Our officers, overwhelmingly, we train 130 different federal agencies and law enforcement officers at Secy under the Department of Homeland Security. Overwhelmingly, they support body cameras because they give you the full context of the interaction. It's just not a snippet of 10 seconds that gets posted on the internet that people are trying to make claims on what really happened there. It'll give you the full context of the interaction to know that these officers and prove out that they followed their training.
So as a former member of Congress, I appreciate that you respect that we have the power of the purse. I do think we have allocated enough money, the current shutdown notwithstanding, to DHS, but perhaps we need to go, and ICE, perhaps we need to go back and make sure that your use of that money for body cameras wouldn't violate.
You were pretty prescriptive in how you assigned that dollars to us. Even though ICE got $75 million, it was pretty prescriptive towards detention centers, contracts and airframe in order to move individuals out of the country. And so the body cams and their maintenance ongoing into appropriation bills into the future needs to be addressed.
I know it costs money to keep all that video around, and that's what my local law enforcement talks about. The ones who haven't adopted them, they just can't afford to keep the records like they're supposed to. But I hope we make sure that you have the funding for body cameras. I've only got about a minute left, but there was a memo about whether you need an administrative warrant or a judicial warrant to enter into residences. And, you know, I'm a strong proponent of the Fourth Amendment, and I think it would be helpful if we stuck to that. I know there are exigent circumstances sometimes where you're in pursuit or something of somebody, but I think for entering a residence or private property, it would be helpful to have judicial warrants. I give you 30 seconds to give us your opinion on that.
Well, I would tell you that all of our officers and at the department, we follow the Constitution and respect the amendments. The Fourth Amendment's incredibly important. In the 400,000 different instances where we've detained someone under administrative warrant, only 28 of those have been used to go into a home. So it's very rare, not very often. It is legal, it is justified, and it is the tool that you have given us as a body and that the Supreme Court has confirmed. So we do use it, but it's very rare when we do.
All right. With that, I yield back to the chairman.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Noem, last month your Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director Todd Lyons confirmed that the Department of Homeland Security is conducting an investigation into the brutal, cruel, and senseless killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Superintendent Drew Evans loudly and publicly complained when, in the minutes and hours after your agents shot Alex Preddy to death in broad daylight, your DHS agents excluded BCA and Minneapolis police from accessing the crime scene. Your agents continued to physically block state and local law enforcement access to the crime scene even after they were presented with a search warrant issued by a judge that authorized their appearance at that location, the crime scene. And so, with you having excluded them, that left your department's agents uniquely positioned to clandestinely seize and control all of the physical evidence from the crime scene, including body camera footage, phones, firearms, ballistic evidence, and other physical evidence. Your attempts to hide the evidence from state and local law enforcement forced Minnesota officials to go into federal court to obtain a temporary restraining order preventing you from destroying or altering the evidence and ordering you to preserve the evidence. Madam Secretary, who was it that ordered you to deny state and local law enforcement agency access to the Alex Preddy crime scene? Was it Donald Trump? Was it Pam Bondi? Was it Kash Patel? Or was it Corey? Whose idea was it?
Congressman, I will tell you it is not my role as the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security to conduct investigations at the federal level.
I'm asking who was it that instructed your agents to deny access to the crime scene to state and local law enforcement agents?
I wish there would have been more local law enforcement there that day. The reason that
they were there, but your agency prevented them from accessing the crime scene. Who was it that gave that order to deny access to the crime scene?
Sir, I don't make those decisions on
who made the decision?
I will tell you that within the agency,
whose decision was it?
Within the agency, for incidences,
Was
that
it
there
Corey's
is internal
idea?
investigations that go through the office of
Okay, well, you're
PR,
not going to answer. You're not going to answer my question. That's fine, ma'am. I'm going to reclaim my time. As the Secretary of Homeland Security, you are the ultimate overseer of your department's investigations into the death of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Isn't that correct?
We conduct investigations within ICE and CBP.
Okay,
that are
fine. You're
internal
responsible for it. That was my
to
question.
the officers to make sure they follow
Within
their protocols and
hours
training.
of these killings, you jumped before the cameras on national TV and lied about these victims, labeling them domestic terrorists, before the investigation had even begun. Even your own ICE director has now admitted that they are not terrorists, and that kind of comment could bias the investigation. Secretary Noem, will you acknowledge that your lies labeling Ms. Good and Mr. Pretty as domestic terrorists could bias the DHS investigation into their killings?
These investigations are ongoing. They're
Well,
internal and
couldn't your
external.
comments have
The
signaled
Incident Review
what
Committee
the
within
conclusion of
ICE
the
will determine
investigation
any
should
actions
be?
that will take it, and within CBP, it's the National Use of Force
Well,
Board that does those
what you
evaluations.
did
They'll
was
continue
actually
to do
prejudice
that.
the investigations that your department is conducting, Madam Secretary. And, you know, it's no mistake. Your department has a pattern of obstructing investigations. A federal judge has lambasted your ICE director for lying in court, and you, the Inspector General, just yesterday revealed to the public, your own Inspector General, who was appointed by Trump, has revealed that your department has been obstructing his independent investigations, your department, and into your department's ability to investigate others.
That is not true. In that
Well,
letter
you know,
that he sent to the Hill yesterday,
I want to enter into the record for unanimous consent two articles that document the fact that the
Gentleman is recognized.
Inspector General says that DHS has systematically obstructed its work. It's a Wall Street Journal article dated March 3rd, yesterday.
Without objection.
And also a Politico article, internal DHS watchdog, Noem, is obstructing our work.
Without objection.
How can the public think that you will give...
Gentleman's time has expired. You've asked for two unanimous consent requests. Without objection, those are into the record. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Secretary Noem, thanks for being here today. Despite the undeniable increase in terrorist threats at the border and in repeatedly misled this committee and the American people by asserting that aliens entering our country were being properly vetted and screened. When I asked him many times about whether or not the border was secure, his response was, secure did not mean migration had stopped. It simply meant that resources had been deployed, enforcement processes were in place, and legal authorities were being used in a proper way. Completely ridiculous. My question is related to the vetting process, though. Can you just elaborate a little bit on how you had to reform and change that process compared to where we were under Secretary Mayorkas?
Well, if you're talking in specifics to programs under USCIS that were being utilized by the Biden administration to allow access into our country, we have put on pause a hold on green cards and naturalizations from 39 different countries of interest that the president had identified with the State Department. And Operation Allies Welcome has been a huge conversation as well. Those individuals are being re-vetted, and they're being re-vetted by going back and interviewing them. Under the refugee program, every year there's to be an in-person interview conducted in order to keep that status and to see if this individual is working to become a legal permanent resident or not. That was not happening at all. There was no interviews happening. There was no looking at social media and what they were out there putting on the internet as far as thoughts and opinions and how they were being successful assimilating into getting a job, or how their kids were doing in school. Those things, all that vetting is being done, and background information now to make new determinations on individuals, not just that were here under that program, but that came in under the Biden administration, that we know that due diligence on vetting wasn't done.
So there's another small change I hope you can just discuss, and that is former border chief, and now with CBP Commissioner Rodney Scott, he testified to our committee in 2023 that an illegal alien was only screened against U.S. criminal databases and not against databases from the alien countries of origin, which makes no sense.
That's
I
correct.
mean, obviously, somebody that didn't live in the States suddenly crosses the border illegally, and the only thing that they had been utilizing was some kind of database, which obviously did not include the individual that illegally crossed. I'm wondering, that must have been something you eliminated almost immediately or changed. I'm just wondering if you could discuss that.
No, we do all that due diligence now, and it's very difficult to get adequate vetting from a country that doesn't have a stable government as well. So when there is that situation and they can't provide you with any information, that individual is not allowed to participate in any of the programs that would allow them to be here on a workman's visa or a student visa or information. If we can't do that vetting ahead of time and know truly who that person is and why they're in the United States, they're not admitted. And one thing I would say is that since I've been secretary, we've signed dozens of security agreements with other countries. With Central and South America, we have to share information to be able to give us their criminal. I've gone there and had them come here so that we could agree to share that information in the future. In the Middle East, incredible partnership on getting access to that. CBP has one of the world's largest databases of information on travelers around the world, and how we cooperate and coordinate with these other countries helps us know when they're coming into our country. And I even negotiated the first extradition out of Honduras to help an angel family here in the United States to prosecute someone who was just convicted the other day of 21 years in prison for murdering Sarah Root. And that's the first time that country had ever extradited anybody for murder to the United States. And so by engaging on these cases, we not only get closure for families and justice for them, but we also do due diligence on who's in this country and what their intentions are when they get here.
And just the final thing I would ask you to comment on. The face-to-face interviews are critical, right?
They are.
And they were not being done under the Biden administration at all.
They were not.
And it can be a brief interaction, but oftentimes it's when they determine whether or not this person is in the States and in a good status. Is that not true?
That is true, and they placed a lot of weight on a letter of recommendation from another agency. So many times some of the other protocols were not checked if they just had a letter of recommendation from someone else in the federal government. We've stopped that, and even if we do get someone who recommends someone as a refugee, we still vet them thoroughly.
Thank you. I yield back, Chairman.
Thank you. I recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Swalwell.
Secretary, you have referenced many times the families behind you, and I see the families, and I see your pain, and I see your loss. I see those who are still with us but have been hurt and changed. And I'm sorry that this has happened to you. And I see you. I know my colleagues see you. Our country sees you. And I thank you for being here today. Secretary, my question for you is, do you see families like Miguel Lopez, who was a neighbor of mine in Livermore, California? Miguel had lived in Livermore for over 30 years. He raised his 3 children in Livermore. His youngest is a senior at a local high school, just finished his football season. Miguel worked at a winery where my wife and I were married almost 10 years ago. Miguel had done everything that was asked of him, went to every immigration proceeding that he was supposed to go to, and in April was put in handcuffs as he was following the orders of the court and going to the proceedings. He was arrested and sent to Mexico over a judge's objection that he not be sent to Mexico and he stay in the United States. Every Sunday night, his wife Rosa and the family have a dinner, and there's an empty chair at the dinner table. Miguel's not there. I went and saw Miguel in Mexico. He doesn't have a job. He's not able to provide. And he said his Spanish isn't even that great because he hasn't been there for 30 years and it's hard for him to communicate. Do you see the pain of families like Miguel Lopez, someone who did not commit a violent crime but has been separated from his family and is not providing, is not working?
Congressman,
do you see that pain?
Did he have a criminal record?
Did Mr. Lopez have a criminal record? In 1995, he pled to a lesser nonviolent charge. But do you see the pain
I
that
do see the pain, and I wish people would do things correctly. If they're not in legal status in this country, they can return home. We will pay for them to return home.
Yeah.
I hope he got the $2,600 he could have gotten.
Do you think that makes up for not being with his family?
It helps because we have agreements with these countries where they are helping to facilitate housing.
It was a
and
nonviolent
training,
crime, Secretary.
But then he gets the chance to come back the right way. Now that he's waited until he's been detained and deported, he will never get the chance to come back to the United States.
It was
and
a
so I wish that
nonviolent.
he would have made the right decision and decided to go home to help his family and him to be together. They have choices that they can make to be together, and we're hopeful that they will continue to do that.
The president also, by the way, is a convicted felon, if you want to talk about criminal records. Secretary Noem, did you or your staff fire one of your pilots recently?
No,
No pilot was relieved of their duty?
no.
The story
Not that I'm aware of.
So the story, and recognizing you're under oath, the story in the Wall Street Journal was incorrect.
That individual was not fired. Do you know how many years it takes to get a military officer to be fired? That story was
he asked to not
completely
fly the
inaccurate.
next day?
It was not accurate, and I was surprised that the Wall Street Journal would print that many inaccuracies in one article.
Well, the Wall Street Journal is not a liberal newspaper of record. Well, tell me
I don't know
then,
what it is anymore.
has a single ICE agent or CBP officer, been disciplined since you've been Secretary of Homeland Security? As we've seen women dragged through their streets by their hair and thrown into unmarked cars, people chased through the fields and factories where they work, public executions happening in our streets. Has a single ICE agent or CBP officer been disciplined?
Yes, they have.
How many?
I don't know the number. I can get that for you if
Do you
you'd
think
like
that number
me
is
to.
important?
I think that it's wise and smart, and what we're doing is accurate according to the law by doing those internal investigations through the process that's set up. There's an Office of Professional Responsibility that does the investigation, and decisions are brought before the National Use of Force Board, and they review each incident as objectively outside of that law enforcement encounter, and then give a decision for
Has
it.
anyone been fired? Has anyone lost their job?
There could be.
Well, I'm not asking if it could be. I'm asking, has anyone been fired?
I'm certain that they have. That happens once in a while when there is a need for someone to be
For conduct
held
related
accountable.
to enforcement actions?
We hold our law enforcement officers accountable and are grateful that they serve, that they put their lives on the line, and also recognize that when these situations that they follow their training and the legality of the course to how they interact with the public.
Yield back.
Gentleman yields. I recognize the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Tiffany.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, how many countries does your department currently list as recalcitrant? That's question one. Question two, have you notified the State Department of those countries' status? And let me set the questions up a little bit before you answer them. So question one is, how many are listed as recalcitrant, and have you notified the State Department? So at the end of the Biden administration, they had listed 13 countries as being recalcitrant, which means they were delaying sending, or they were delaying or completely refusing to accept return of their nationals when we attempt to deport them. You know, the list includes Communist China, Cuba, Russia, Pakistan, Somalia, and others. And under the Immigration and Nationality Act, DHS notifies the State Department that a country is non-compliant. Is DHS notifying the State Department of people who that are here in this country from recalcitrant countries?
Yes, but all that decision-making is made in conjunction with the State Department. They help us with that. The travel documents for our detainees that need to be returned back to their home countries, those are coordinated and produced by the State Department. That's why individuals within our detainment centers at times will wait for that paperwork to come through so that they can be returned home. Some of those countries that don't receive their own citizens home, the State Department helps us through diplomacy means to agree to that. Some limit the amount they will take each week. And then we have third country removals as well, where someone from their country, if they can't return there, we may place them in another agreeable country that will host them so that they're out of the United States.
Yeah, one of my biggest concerns is that in 2023, a Chinese government official openly bragged about allowing, that they did not allow the United States to repatriate Chinese illegal aliens, and we know they are the greatest threat out there. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to submit a news report on that matter from the Washington Times. So, do you know, are we still issuing visas to Chinese nationals, given their long time and unapologetic refusal to cooperate with our deportation efforts? It doesn't seem like China's changed their, the way they're doing business. Are we still issuing visas to Chinese nationals?
I believe that we are, but I can get an answer back to you.
If you would, that would really be appreciated. Before the Biden administration left office, they put out a rule that was built upon the Obama administration's Guam Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands visa waiver program, and essentially allowed Chinese nationals to be able to sidestep the visa process that we have and gain entry into the Mariana Islands with no visa. And myself and Senator Scott have introduced a bill in reference to this. And as a result, after the Obama years, or actually during and after the Obama years, you saw this explosion of birth tourism where actually Chinese mothers were having more children on the CNMI Islands than United States residents. And I think that's really a big national security, public safety, and immigration fraud concern. And I sent a letter to your agency back in February, and we have not received an answer. Can we get an answer to that?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I just met with the governor there, and we talked about them wanting that back, and them, but me recognizing that they needed to come in compliance with some of those security concerns first. So yes.
Do you know, are Chinese nationals still being admitted on the CNMI, sidestepping the normal visa process?
I don't believe they're sidestepping the visa process. They do come as tourists, I believe, and that's one of the things that they would like to have is address some of their tourism industry and how it's been struggling because we've been so strict about what happens there in regards to Chinese nationalists.
Do you believe that birth tourism, like I referenced earlier, that we saw this explosion during the
Yes.
Obama years, do you think that has been brought to heel
I do.
under this administration?
I do.
Yeah, if you could provide some information in regards to that, that would really be appreciated. I would just ask one final question. Are you actively, we've seen the immigration fraud, right? Mm-hmm. And my district runs right up to the Twin Cities in western Wisconsin, as well as across America. Are you actively rooting out the Department of Homeland Security, that immigration fraud that is going on? Because I can tell you my constituents are very concerned, like when we see with the truckers. Mm-hmm. I mean, I-94, as you're well aware, 20 miles from Minneapolis leading into western Wisconsin. They're very concerned about this. Are you guys dealing with this immigration fraud?
Yes, we are. We are, and we've already, revoked national naturalization and citizenship and legal permanent residencies from thousands of people because of immigration fraud. And now investigations are ongoing into prosecution.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary Noem, for being here today. I served on active duty in the United States Air Force. I agree with you that we must have strong borders and that undocumented immigrants with final removal orders or committed violent crimes should be deported. Now, the reason the overwhelming majority of Americans have turned against you is because you have engaged in corruption, strayed from your mission, and abused your power. Masked, anonymous federal agents have killed 3 Americans. Federal agents are illegally conducting surveillance of Americans exercising their First and Second Amendment rights, and your agents are arresting people who should not be arrested. I'm now going to show you a slide of Liam Ramos. This is a picture of your agents detaining Liam in Minnesota. He's wearing a blue bunny hat. Let me ask you, did Liam commit a crime?
Liam was not detained. His father was. and his father abandoned him. And when they went to try to return Liam to his mother, she wouldn't come out of the house and get him either. So therefore, Liam's father chose to take Liam with him.
I believe you're not telling the truth. School officials at the scene say there were people in the house saying they could take care of Liam, and a federal judge rejected the arguments that your agency made. The federal judge stated, in fact, that this incident originated in, quote, the ill-conceived and incompetently implemented government pursuit of daily deportation quotas, apparently even if it requires traumatizing children, and then he forced your agency to release Liam, fly him back all the way from the detention center in Texas back to Minnesota, and release his father as well. Now I'm going to show you another picture. It's of Amalia, who is a toddler that ICE also detained. Let me ask you, did Amalia commit a crime?
No, she did not. She is with her family.
Right. And the reason she's with her family is because she almost died in ICE detention until folks brought a lawsuit forcing the release of Amalia. Now, you may wonder, well, why is ICE going after children? And it's because study after study shows that immigrants, both documented and undocumented, commit less crimes than native-born Americans. So I'm going to put up this slide from NPR. It actually describes also a study that in Texas, immigrants committed less than 37% of crimes compared to native-born Americans. And this has now resulted in your agents having to go after people, such as children, who should not be detained. So now I'm going to show you a video from New Jersey where 4th and 5th graders are running away from ICE agents.
Students running from the presence of ICE agents. That's what the Lindenwold School District says happened this morning as children waited for their school bus.
I'm going to show you a second video, this time from Minnesota, where your agents are terrorizing children being dropped off at school.
People are trying to get their kids to school, and you're out here threatening and terrorizing people.
So, Secretary Noem, will you commit to stopping ICE from doing operations at or near school bus stops, school drop-off locations, and school campuses?
Our ICE officers do targeted enforcement operations, and they follow the same protocols that other law enforcement do, and having those interdictions happen not in public places, that they do it to where a situation and someone is more isolated and alone so that it can protect any people that would be around at that point in time. So those clips that you show are not the full encounters of how those folks were evading law enforcement interdiction and ended up near that school. Those law enforcement officers did not target that school or conduct their operation near there. The evolving situation on the ground would have been helpful to have local law enforcement backup on the scene to help secure locations, and these individuals and law enforcement officers follow the same enforcement techniques, use of force techniques,
thank you. I'm going to
and
reclaim
training
my
that
time.
others do.
I just showed you a video with ICE officers at a school drop-off location. So your refusal to commit to stopping these operations at or near schools and drop-off locations is why you're failing. So I'm going to show you this encapsulates why you're failing.
For my entire life, but sorry. I watched 4th and 5th grade kids run away from our own government. I never want to see that again. And I'm not going to stand by and watch my neighbors run away scared. It's not Camden County. It's not New Jersey. It's not the United States. I love the United States. I love New Jersey. I love Camden County. I love Lindenwold too. But that's not what, we are. It's not who we are.
It is not who we are. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Madam Secretary, if you need a break at any time, just have your team let us know, and we'll be happy to do that. We do have a couple who got to run, so we're going to try to get a few more in if that works.
You bet,
Okay.
absolutely.
Let's go with, we'll go with the gentleman from North Carolina. Mr. Nas, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, thank you for being here. I'm pleased with the results we've discussed. To the Angel families, I'm going to apologize for my colleagues. They they issue crocodile tears, they issue fake sympathy, and then they continue to defend the open border policies that enable preventable crimes that brought you here today. I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed that they are still continuing to defend illegal immigration and act like it is not a mortal wound to this country. Your country failed you, and I'm sorry. Madam Secretary, very quickly, does illegal immigration help or hurt the quality of health care for Americans?
It hurts the quality of health care.
Does it help or hurt the quality of public education?
It hurts the quality of public education.
Public safety?
It hurts public safety.
What about the quality of social safety nets?
Yes.
Does it help or hurt?
It hurts. It diverts the resources away from American citizens who need the service of those programs.
Does it help or hurt local law enforcement?
It hurts them, stretches their resources too thin.
What about the availability of housing?
It's driven up housing costs.
What about the cost of insurance?
Insurance is higher.
What about wages for American workers?
They steal wages out of pockets. In fact, one of the most compelling stories, if he could ever get the chance to tell it, is Marcus's. He was a truck driver for years. When he worked for that company, he was paid 70 cents a mile. He said now they pay their drivers 40 to 45 cents a mile because they're all illegal aliens.
Does it help or hurt American children?
It hurts American children.
What about low-income families? Does it help or hurt Americans who are on the lower spectrum of the income table?
Yeah, it hurts them. And most of our public housing and assistance, many of them were filled with illegal immigrants instead of families who really needed the help.
Yep. And the number that I find most staggering as a federal law enforcement officer that is neglected over and over and over again is since the year 2000, 1.3 million Americans have lost their lives because of drug overdoses. Nobody talks about that cost. Yes, Americans are involved, but that does not happen without open borders and illegal immigration. That's an incalculable cost. Lost families, lost creativity, lost culture. Talk about a blight on our country's future. Losing 1.3 million Americans in 26 years. And rather than condemn this blight, elected Democrats, activist judges, activist bureaucrats, rather than assisting you in getting illegal immigrants out of the country, rather than just simply saying, if you're here illegally, leave. They fight you at every turn. Can you please describe briefly the obstruction that you've had to endure in trying to remove people who are here illegally by my friends on the other side of the aisle?
Well, activist federal judges many times force us to cease operations or to stop detaining individuals while we go to appeal and have to win at a higher court that is more fair and recognizes the legality and the constitutional rights that American citizens have and how our law enforcement operators and officers do their work each and every day. So it is
what about local law enforcement and sanctuary jurisdictions? Have they obstructed your efforts?
That's one of the reasons why you see so many of our agents in an area when we have to do a targeted enforcement, is that we also have to, because we don't have the back of local law enforcement, have to secure the scene and make sure we're prepared for any kind of a situation that might come up.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to close with this. To any of the members of the audience and the Angel families who are here for your own personal tragedy, if you believe that the open border advocates in the Democratic Party care more about you as opposed to illegal immigrants, I want you to stand up. Not one person. Not one person is standing up. Not one person on the other side of the aisle is committing to help you, Madam Secretary, remove people who are here illegally. And it really ticks me off when people say they have not committed a crime, so we shouldn't deport them. What that is saying in another sense is we want an American to be victimized from someone who is here illegally before we take action. That's disgusting. If you're here illegally, you should leave the country. That should not be too radical.
Gentleman yields back. We have a couple unanimous consent requests from the ranking member.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Politico, April 25, 2025. Judge says 2-year-old U.S. citizen appears to have been deported without due process.
Objection.
And The Guardian, January 27, 2026. 5-year-old deported to Honduras despite being U.S. citizen.